Hello. Hello. Welcome to the brand new Graves and Gardens podcast. I am Jay Pine, and I am nervous. I am more nervous than I normally am doing my shows. So bear with me. Hopefully we get some people on here, and I want to give you kind of a rundown of what this show is about and what it's not. Some of you that have been with me have seen some of my other shows, particularly the Pastor and Professor podcast. And Doug and I are still moving forward with that show, but we're on hiatus until after the first of the year. Doug has a big move coming up and a new job transition. And I was at the campground all summer, and so we had to take a little bit of a break, and then Doug's move is happening. So that is still coming. One of the things that I wanted to do, well, let me put it this way. There were several things that we wanted to do with the other show, with the Pastor and Professor podcast. And I felt like my stuff was monopolizing all the time. There's just a lot of things we wanted to get to with the Pastor and Professor podcast that we weren't able to yet. And on the same token, I needed to go deeper and further with my stuff as well. So it just made sense for me to kind of do a different show. This show is all about the journey that I'm on, particularly since May 13, 2021. And I will get into that a little bit if you don't know my story. But also, I have to say one thing, I guess, that you're gonna learn some things that have happened since then. You'll notice some speech issues. That's all part of the story, so bear with me. It's not just that I'm nervous. It's not that. But I don't really want to do this show. I don't necessarily really want to tell this story. I don't want to be this vulnerable and this transparent with this, to be honest with you. However, I feel like God is calling me to do so. Since the heart attack, I've just been trying to do and go where God is leading me and doing what he's asking of me. And it is very clear to me that he's asking me to tell my story in various forms and various ways to very is that the right word? Varying audiences. So that's first and foremost. This is, I put this in the hands of God, and he's making me do this. So the other thing is I am searching for answers. And again, once I tell the story, this will make a little more sense. I'm searching for answers and clarity and understanding, and peace. And ultimately identity. One of the things that has been the most troublesome to me since I've been back is identity, and my identity being, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just very different. And we'll get there, but I definitely, ultimately for me, I'm trying to find out who I am in Christ and who he intends me to be and what he intends me to do. When you hear the end of the story, you'll understand a little bit more of why that's important to me, as it's important to everybody. But particularly me in this situation, you'll understand that. I also anticipate to do I'm kind of winging this. I'm kind of letting everything kind of flow and what I'm dealing with at the time, other than today. Today, I need to kind of lay the foundation of the story. And some of you have heard my story. Some of you haven't. Some of you have not heard some of these other details, even if you do know my story or know me fairly well. But I'm going to bring on some guests from time to time, some people that maybe have had similar experiences that I have. There's others that I feel like their stories need to be told as well. And in hearing their stories and connecting with their stories helps me process all this and help kind of find some answers or get some clarity on things. So I'm going to bring on some people to help me with that. I'm going to bring on people that are just purely supportive, that are here for moral support and prayers and all that. This is going to be a shock. I know this is going to be a shock for all of you who know me. There are going to be a lot of tears on this show. No getting around that. Both happy and sad. There's going to be happy and sad tears. But I think there's going to be a lot of laughter too. I was just actually talking with Annetta before I came on, and she's really taken an approach, a humor approach to all this, which I think helps me tremendously, although some of them are misplaced. But I think, I've always kind of approached life like that anyhow. So it'll be funny. There'll be laughter. There'll be laughter, tears probably as well. So that's kind of what the show is. It's going to be a journey, me being transparent with what I'm dealing with, my conversations with God, my conversations with myself, trying to figure things out. And again, this will make more sense once we get past tonight. So tonight's going to be a little heavy with the story. It's going to be definitely heavier than most of the other shows, I think. And we will kind of go from there. Other than that, I'm going to take the other episodes are going to be specific, maybe more specific topics. It's something I'm dealing with right then and there. So yeah, we're going to talk about all kinds of things. We're going to talk about how music has played a role in all this for me, as it always has in my life, but particularly in the past year and a half. That's, you'll hear more about that. And for those of you who don't know, I also do another show called Heartbeat Radio, which talks specifically about how God uses music, or when God used music in our lives to, maybe it's a song at the right time. Maybe it's the songs that lift you up in the morning that get you going in getting your day going. Maybe it's a song that met you at a particular need in a certain season or a certain challenge of your life. So I'm really excited about that. The first season was all me. I'm running out of content myself. No, I have like 4 or 5 shows left in me to share music and other stuff that comes up. But what I really want to do is I want to hear from others. I want to hear other people's go-to songs and their playlists and their walk-up song. I really like the idea of what your walk-up song is in heaven. I had a big kick this summer. I got to take my son Cubby to his first major league game when we were in Cleveland, and it was all dad's dream of that day. And it was picture perfect. The weather was great. Cubby was so excited. It was everything I ever dreamed it would be. And I waited a long time for it. And one of the Guardians, Oscar Gonzalez walk-up song, if you don't know, if you're a baseball fan, you might know this because it became a big thing during the playoffs. Is his walk up song is SpongeBob SquarePants. So it's really comical hearing the whole stadium yell SpongeBob SquarePants. But I love this idea of a walk up song when we enter heaven. So I'm kind of trying to compile a list of people's walk up songs, and we'll create some material around that and a playlist on Spotify and things like that. So the new season rather starts this Wednesday. It's exclusively on Spotify. If you don't have the paid membership on Spotify, you still get to hear the commentary. You get to hear a truncated version of the songs that we include, but you'll need the premium version to hear the full songs. But you can certainly go look up the songs on your own after that as well. So that's Heartbeat Radio. The other thing I wanted to kind of stress is I really want this to be interactive as much as it can. Even tonight, I'm going to need stops and so forth. I'd really love to know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. I'm definitely going to need some support tonight. But any questions you have about the experience I'm going to share, about what's happened in the last year and a half, anything like that, please put it in the chat. There's going to be times where I bring somebody on the show. Just I see a comment, I'm going to ask you, hey, you have your phone on you? Can we put you on? We'll have you come in on an interview, and I have a separate screen set up to have people join me live on the video. Next week, I'll also have a phone call capability as well. I tested it out tonight. I'm not feel 100% about the quality of the sound. Yeah, the quality of the sound on the phone calls. But yeah, so please in the chat on YouTube and comments on Facebook and Twitter, please. Anything you want to share, something you relate to, a story that you have surrounding that, comments. If you have a question, particularly questions, that'll help me along as well. So please share those questions and comments, and I can bring them on the stage and so forth, and we can talk about them. So, All right, so that's kind of what the show is. It's kind of, again, just going to be following along with my journey and learning how to live life after being sent back. All right. All right, so we're going to get going on the story. And so if you're with me, I'd love to know where you're from as well, or where you're calling in from. I'm assuming I probably know most of you, but in the chat, if you can just let me know where you're calling in from, or where you're watching from, or where you're listening from. The audio version will be on Spotify probably tomorrow. So if you want to listen in your car, you can do that as well. All right. trying to be prepared for this moment. It's been some time since I've shared the full story. So here we go. And I'm going to try to be shorter than I normally am. My goal is to get to a point where I can share the experience without it being so heavy and so breaking me every time. I'm hoping we get there. So yay. Is it Polk City? Polk City, Florida. Richard and Nancy, my friends Richard and Nancy are joining from Florida. Yay. Yay. They will be coming into to my journey probably next week. You're going to hear more about how God brought. See, I'm already going to struggle. How God brought Richard and Nancy to me this summer in northern Michigan. So you're going to be hearing that, and hopefully you're going to be hearing Nancy Bennett on one of the episodes of Heartbeat Radio. I'm still working on that. So thanks for joining. Okay, again, feel free to ask any questions along the way. All right, so May 13th, 2021. I'll back up a couple days before. One day before. So we were in Chicago that winter. We were on our way to Arizona, and with COVID and the holidays, we weren't going to get there until later in January, and we had to be back in northern Michigan in May. So we decided to stay in Chicago, and I was looking forward to getting back to the campground. And our camper was at my parents' house in Indiana. So we decided that Cubby and I were going to drive to Indiana and pick up the camper. And Juju and Annetta were going to stay in Chicago for another week. Cubby and I would go get set up. We'd come back and get them and get our summer summer going. Annetta had some things she wanted to finish up in Chicago, so it all made sense. So Cubby and I went down to my parents, and it was a great weekend. We were only anticipating being there overnight, but due to some car issues, trailer being stuck or camper being stuck, we were there for a little bit longer. But we had a really, really great time. It was Cubby's first time being with his grandparents by himself, and he was a little bit older. It was just a really wonderful, wonderful, wonderful trip. So Cubby and I picked up the camper, and we headed towards northern Michigan. And we got up to northern Michigan. It was, again, just like the trip, the visit with my mom and dad. The whole trip up, Cubby and I just had a blast. It was magical. We were just being boys, and we stopped at every trailer or camper store, I think, on the way, and looking for things for the campground and for our camper and so forth. It was a really great trip. I had so much fun, and Cubby did too, and it was perfect. It's the first time we really had that much time alone together. I usually, I do date nights with them individually, but that's the first time I'd had Cubby particularly for that long a period. So it was great. It was great. So we get up to northern Michigan, and we get to the campground. Campground wasn't open for another few days yet. The work campers were arriving, and some of them were there. And so we had a few days before the open. Stressful time for the owners, Sam and Jeff, and they're scrambling to get everything ready and getting the work campers. Work campers checked in, and so I just pulled in. I stopped in the office and hugged Sam and said hello. It was a long day, so Cubby and I were just going to go drop the camper down and kind of put it up, and then we'll get everything ready the next day. And so we went got something to eat. We came back and fell asleep that night. at about 4:00 that evening, I didn't wake up. I was awake. I was rolling over and was awake and just felt this massive pressure in my chest. And I was like, totally caught me off guard. I was kind of rolling over from my side or my back to my stomach, and I was like, oh, like it jolted me. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I remember being alarmed when it first happened, and really painful. Well, let me go this way with this. So it lasted about, I'm guessing, 20 minutes to a half hour, and then it subsided. And I think that first one, it came back sometime later, like another half hour. I fell back asleep. Finally, it happened again, and I think that time is when I really started panicking. I knew I was in trouble. It happened a third time too, but I knew I was in trouble, not just because the pain. I knew I was in trouble, and I knew this was serious because when I closed my eyes, I was trying to breathe through this, and like, all right, calm yourself down, breathe, let's figure this out. And as soon as I closed my eyes, the only thing I saw was Jesus front and center in my mind. He was right there telling me, he's like, okay, he's telling me to breathe. It's like, you're going to be okay. Focus on me and you're going to be okay. Just breathe. I'm here. Just focus. And then again, it subsided and it went away. And then it came back the second time, the same thing. I closed my eyes and Jesus was right there. I think, I mean, again, that to me was, I knew I was in trouble because of that. I mean, I know maybe that sounds, I'm not sure the word. I struggle with words. I knew Jesus was with me, but I also know he was with me because I might not make it through this. So I, the panic came from Cubby and I were sleeping in the same bed together in the camper. And he's right next to me, and as he always does, he's always touching me and has his hands on my face, or he's always has to be touching me when he's sleeping, and he's right next to me. And I look over at him, and he's sound asleep and peaceful and beautiful, and the only thing I could think of is him waking up without a daddy. And I had some kind of, I don't know, when in between the times I fell back asleep or whatever it was, or a vision, I don't know what it was, but I saw him wake up and trying to wake me, and I wasn't there. And I knew I had to fight at that moment and do whatever Jesus was asking me to do to get through this, because I couldn't bear the thought of that actually happening, Cubby waking up and I wasn't there. That's still probably definitely one of the hardest parts of this story for me is picturing him and seeing him and envisioning that happening. But so it happened a third time. I fell asleep the second time, fell asleep third time. Now, a lot of things are going through my head at this point. I don't know what to do. We're in the middle of nowhere in northern Michigan. We're a long way from a hospital, about an hour away from a hospital. Um, I know Sam and Jeff are there, and I know I could have called Sam. I know that, but you hear other people say this. I just didn't want to burden anybody. It was in the middle of the night. They're getting ready for the campground opening. There was a lot of new people there that I didn't know. I don't know who was there and who wasn't there. I hadn't seen anybody else other than Sam. But I didn't want to burden them, and whatever. And I also didn't know what they did with Cubby. So I was like, do I call 911? Because if I call 911, what do they do with Cubby? Annetta and Juju aren't here. Do they call family services? I don't want them to put them in family services. Right? It was in the middle of the night. I couldn't call anybody that I knew from Traverse City. It was just, my mind was just racing with ideas, and at the same time trying to focus on Jesus helping me breathe and survive this moment. And after the third time, it was now 6-ish in the morning, I think, and it was early enough or late enough to finally call Annetta. I, in my infinite, I tried to I decided that I was going to drive to the hospital. I didn't want to call 911. I thought that was a really good idea. I didn't think it was a really good idea, but I thought that my thinking was that it happened 3 times. Even when at the height of that, when it happened in those 3 moments, I could have driven through it. That was my thinking. And that way I didn't have to burden anybody. So I called Annetta, and I remember being in the parking back at our campsite, and on the way out to the main road, I called her and said, listen, this is what's happening. You need to call somebody in Traverse City, and somewhere where I can drop Cubby off, and I'm going to the hospital. That's all I remember. I don't remember what Annetta said. I don't remember her response to what was happening. I don't remember that moment. All I know, somewhere I was taking him to our friend Sarah's, and I don't remember the drive. I remember getting to Sarah's, and I dropped him off and went to the hospital, and got to the hospital. I remember walking in. It's pretty much all I remember. They did an EKG and stuff, from what I understand. And then I remember being in the ER, in the emergency room, and the nurses or doctors came in and said the EKG came back fine. So I'm like, all right, cool. Well, maybe it's something else or whatever. I knew it wasn't like heartburn or anything like that, or I knew it wasn't that. But as soon as they said that, at least in my memory, as soon as they said that, the doctors came. I think it was the nurse who was saying that. The doctors came in and said, "Oh no, you definitely had a heart attack." The blood work had come back and said, "Oh, you definitely had a heart attack." And I remember at that moment feeling defeated. I was just like, I remember slumping and being like, I gotta call my mom. I gotta call Annetta. And I was like, but the nurse was in there. Doctor had left, and I was just crap. And it was never on my radar. I wasn't in the greatest shape, obviously, but my numbers were all good. There was a family history that I didn't remember. I wasn't paying attention to. It was never in the realm of possibilities for it. It never crossed my mind ever. So I was rather defeated. And so the nurse was could tell I was upset, obviously. And she was like, listen, we know what we're dealing with now. They're going to want to take you to the cath lab in the next few days or so, and they'll get you up there. They'll find out what we're dealing with. They may have to put a stent in or a balloon or something, but at least we know what we're dealing with, and we can move forward. So I'm on the phone, call my mom and call Annetta, and I'm telling Annetta what the nurse said and what the next steps are and so forth. And the doctors came in, and while I was on the phone with Annetta, and said, "Oh no, he's going up now." So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm on the phone with the nurse. I'm like, oh, so I guess they're taking me to the cath lab now. So, and I'm asking, does she need to get here? Does she need to get here? She's in Chicago with our daughter. Does she need to get here now? And they're like, no, this is a kind of a routine thing now. We do this, many times a day. let's just wait to see. There's no reason to put them in jeopardy or have them race and frantically in stress, more so than they already are. So let's just wait and see what happens with the cath lab. And so, yeah, so that was it. So that's the last I remember until several days later. So the story goes, and I will have Annetta on at some point telling this part of the story. There's some funny things happen with this. So Annetta gets a call. I get to the cath lab, and like an hour later, she gets a call from the doctor that is with me in the cath lab, and says he's having a massive heart attack right now, and we have to race him up into the OR. So now they race me up. At some point, my heart stops. I don't know if it was then. I don't know if they had told her my heart had stopped and they had brought me back, or we found out that afterwards. I don't remember. But they raced me upstairs, and now Annetta, this part also breaks me. So she now has to get on a flight immediately to Traverse City, and get here. And I think about what that flight must have been like, and with Juji, and being in the air, and I was going to be in the OR for a while, not knowing if I was going to be there when they land. So, I'll have Annetta on with that story. There's some funny things from the airport, particularly, that I'll have her tell. I put a little music in the background because I'm just hearing myself. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the chat or the comments. I'd love to see them. I'd love to kind of take a break from time to time with the story. Other episodes won't be so story heavy with this, but this one needs to kind of set the foundation. But I still don't hesitate to stop me and make a comment or question anything, because I'm sure I'm leaving stuff out. So, yeah. So I ended up having a emergency quadruple bypass, and I don't know what happened. The first thing I remember consciously was hearing Annetta's voice, and I remember the sheer panic, just utter panic, because I didn't know what's happening, didn't know I was in the hospital, didn't know anything. All I know is I hear Annetta's voice, and I went to talk to her, and I have tubes in my throat, my hands are tied down. They do that so you don't pull out and freak out when you come to and pull everything out. So I was a sheer panic. I can't even tell you if you've had moments like that. Whoo, it was instant like panic, but also instant recognition that I'm in trouble if I panic. I was like, I'm not going to survive this panic thing. So they probably gave me something at that same time too, which I'm sure they do, that helped me get through that moment. Cause I was panicked. Anyway, so I was in and out for the next few days. They did not know that I'm allergic to narcotics going in. So, they were battling, they learned that. So they were battling getting me not to get sick and so forth. Can you imagine having to throw up and vomit when you have your chest open? And it would not have been fun. So yeah, I was in and out for several days, and I kept on not understanding where I was at, the drugs and so forth. And I kept on asking, like, what happened? Where am I at? I mean, I remembered that, going to the cath lab. And so it didn't dawn on me that I wouldn't be in the situation I was in if I just went to the cath lab. It didn't occur to me something else happened. So several days later, I went to, again, having a moment where I'm trying to figure what's happening. 'Cause I'm hearing nurses talk and doctors talk about things that I don't understand, or like they're talking about somebody else, right? I don't get it. And I remember like scratching my chest and feeling a staple in my chest. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, wait a minute. Like I had no clue. It was probably 3 or 4 days later. I didn't know I had this big gaping thing in my chest and all the pain and everything, because I was so drugged up and I was freaking out. I was just like, whoa, time out. What happened? I thought I was going to the cath lab. And then, so they kept on having to retell me the story and so forth. So, excuse me while I take a sip of water. So that's the first part of that story. Again, trying to be more condensed than I can, because it's taken a long time. All right, so I don't know when this was. I don't know when this occurred, but my heart had stopped, and I was gone. I found myself. The first thing I remember, first of all, I do remember leaving my body. I remember kind of being shaking the skin, and like coming out of a cocoon or something. I was just like, I left everything behind. It's like I remember being shaken, and I remember asking, what's happening? And then I was released from my body. And I found myself in a place that was, the only way I can describe it is when you look, you have your eyes closed and you're looking up at the sun, and you're just kind of feeling the warmth on your face, and you're seeing the oranges and yellows and reds behind your eyelids. It's just this warm, it was just this warm, indescribable feeling. I can't explain it to you. There was a lightness to it. I didn't recognize anything other than the feeling at this moment. I was, just taking in this unbelievable glow, and how it was just so, it's indescribable. It was just this warmth and beauty and love that was just, I can't explain it. Now, I did not see anybody or anything, but I felt like I wasn't alone. I felt like there were, I understood them to be angels at the moment. I instantly knew it. Or at least, as soon as I recognized or came to the understanding that they were angels, or the understanding was given to me that there were angels and helpers with me to lead me to where's next, I panicked. I remember saying, whoa, nope, time out. And I forget about the feeling I was having and experiencing at the moment. That was a temporary thing. That was just a quick, tiny glimpse of what was to come. But it was unlike anything of this world. But I was like, whoa, time out. No, I can't go. I'm not going. Nope. I'm not going. I kept on saying, I'm not going. I need to know they're all right. I need to know they're going to be okay. I'm not going. I'm not. And I was panicked, and I felt like I was starting to like have a real panic attack, which I had never had at that point. And I was so frightened. And I don't think I've ever used that word in this moment, but I was so frightened. And I've never been afraid of death per se. I never really thought about it. But I wasn't necessarily afraid of it. But I couldn't go. I couldn't go. And I was fighting like, no, I'm not going unless I know they're going to be okay. And then nothing was said to me, but I was given this vision and glimpse. I was able to see their whole life. It was like in a movie where you see those scenes where your life flashes in front of you. I saw their lives flash in front of me, and I saw them thriving, and I saw them happy, and I saw them at all stages of their life. I don't remember the details. I go, what Juju's job was, or what her career was, or who her husband or wife was. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just don't remember that stuff. I was shown it, and I was shown that they were happy, and Annetta particularly, I saw her thriving and at peace and taking care of our babies. And I was also told at that same moment when I saw that whole thing, and as I saw that, there was just a weight lifted off me. It was so beautiful. But I was also told I was going to be able to watch over them. And everything was okay. Everything was, all of a sudden I was like, it was such an amazing gift. It's the only thing I needed. At that moment, it was the only thing I needed. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready. So the next, I don't know how long this was. I don't know how long. I've never really asked how long I was gone for or whatever. I don't know if that translates into the time. I don't know. Was it when my heart was out of my body? I don't know. Was it when I died earlier? I just don't know. And I don't know how long it was. But what transpired next was just, there's no words that can describe what I experienced, and it's the root of all my issues now. There's no way to describe the feeling and the peace and the understanding and the weightlessness. There was nothing. Everything was, there was no worries. There's no problems. There was no stress. It was like, those words don't, I wish I had better words to do that. To tell you. It's not, the only thing I can say, we don't have the human capacity to understand what it was like. I experienced it, but there's no way that I could come up with words that would relate it to you. And there's no way that you'd be able to understand without having a similar thing. But it was the most, it was everything you ever imagine it would be like. And a million times better. That's all I can say. There was a happiness and peace that was there's nothing I can tell you. But what happened next was, I realized my IPVO was on. Again, feel free to comment, ask questions through this. I'll see it and I can take a break and so forth through this. So as I'm moving forward, I feel like I'm moving forward. And again, I feel like there's angels and there's beings with me that are guiding me and surrounding me with love and light. And it was, yeah. So up in the distance now, after some time, I see what appears to be mountains, like the silhouette of mountains. And so I'm looking, obviously I know where we're going, and I feel like we're there, where this is part of heaven. That was the understanding. This is me entering. So I see these mountains up ahead, and I see them, and it's great, cool mountains. um, Again, it was just a beautiful thing. It was just the mountains were like dark gray, black, and there was light behind them, so it was just a silhouette of them. And as I got closer, I realized they weren't mountains. I started realizing they were the silhouettes of people. So again, it was just grays and blacks, like cardboard cutout type thing. But I'm seeing people in hundreds and thousands of people that are like, there's people that are right in front of me, and there's people now coming around as I'm going closer. There are people, all around. And I forgot what Doug told me. There's a thing, Congress of Witnesses, I think he said, maybe. I don't know if Richard, if you've heard that term. Maybe he said that, Congress of Witnesses, or I don't know, something along those lines. But as I get closer and closer, now I'm starting to see people, and it's no longer silhouettes. Circle of witnesses. That circle of witnesses. So now I'm starting to see people, and I see a group of people right in front of me first and foremost. And it's interesting because the great cloud of witnesses. Richard said, it was Netta said circle of witnesses. All right, the great cloud of witnesses. Sorry. It's funny because I saw Jesus immediately, but that's not where my focus was. You would think you're entering heaven, and Jesus is right in front of you. You'd think hey, but that's not where my focus was. The first thing, to be honest with you, I recognized were the dogs in my life. The dogs I used to have, our family had. And I think I was looking at bigger picture. I did not see. I had a kitty that left too that I'm sure was there, but I didn't see. But I saw this group of people, and Jesus right behind them, and I see my grandparents and my two uncles, her two sons, my grandparents' two sons, and Jesus. That's who I initially saw. Was my grandma and grandpa, my uncles, my two uncles, and Jesus. There's those five people, and everybody else kind of out and around. Now afterwards, there's other people there. I recognize other people there, and there's still times where I still see it. I can still see faces and so forth, and certain things come to me. But the focus was on that group of people. Now, the other strange thing about this is I had never met my grandparents. Yet I knew exactly who they were. I never met my grandparents. They'd been gone for a long time, and my older brothers knew them, but I had not, and my little brother had not. So I found it, I don't know what the word is, not overwhelming. It was so beautiful that's who was there. I mean, I in my wildest dreams, I wouldn't have guessed that. I never really even thought about who would be there. But I certainly never would have guessed that. So as I'm coming closer, I recognize who it is, and now I'm starting to recognize some other faces, and my grandma embraces me in a hug. She just embraced me in this hug that was indescribable. Again, there's no words for it. I'm hugging the grandma that I've never met with Jesus. Like I'm like hugging her, like Jesus is right here. Like he has his hand on my shoulder, and then everybody starts hugging me. So there's hundreds, thousands of people here. All of a sudden, it was just like one big, unbelievable moment of like there. And also the thing was too, the looks on their faces as I was coming up. That's another thing that I'll never ever forget. the look on everybody's faces, not just my grandparents, but particularly my grandma, but everybody was so eager to see me and so happy to see me. It was just, I was like, unlike anything. It was just, it was unbelievable. Just the looks on their faces, like the anticipation of seeing me and embracing me and welcoming me to heaven was just, it was unbelievable. So my grandma, actually before she took me into the embrace, she said, she put her hands in my face. I forgot this part, to say this part, I didn't forget it, but she put her hands in my face and said, "You are so loved." And then she embraces me, and then it was a moment with her only. And then Jesus' hand on my shoulder, and then Jesus and everybody else. It's like Jesus gave me that moment with her. So, and there's this big hug, and this just, I can't tell you, again, like I can't express any of this. It's impossible, and it's impossible for you to imagine, even though you think you can imagine, and maybe you've seen videos or movies and things of that moment. There's no way to capture it. We're not capable of understanding that until you experience it and you're there. So I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't fearful. I was just loved, and the feeling was so overwhelming. It was just peace and love and understanding and contentment and no worries, no stress. It was like, again, I'm going to go in circles with that, so I'll stop. It was just something that was unbelievable. So the embrace starts to subside after which seemed like an eternity, and it was the most. That was the most overwhelming, probably, moment of the entire thing. So this all happens, and it's. I'm so joyful. I'm so at peace. I'm so ready, and so she lets go of me, with her hands on my shoulders and arms, and she looks at me and she says, just a second. Again, the rest of these episodes is this. I had to get this one out so people understand I laid the foundation for this, and we can always refer back to this story because it all starts here. It all starts in a moment. My grandma looks at me. I'll never forget it. It took me a long time to tell this part of the story. She looks at me. And again, I'm so at peace. She looks at me and says, "Tell your mom I love her." And my mom, adored her mom. She said, "Tell your mom I can't wait to see her. Or, tell your mom I love her, and I can't wait to see her." The look on her face, again, that same welcoming, eager, anxious, but loving and patient look on her face was just, it was so beautiful. But also I was so confused. At that moment, I was like, tell her yourself. You're going to see her the same time I am. I was at that moment, I knew something was like wrong. I was like, wait a second. What? I'm looking around, and again, everybody's just smiling and with so much joy and love. And I'm so confused now. Everything was so beautiful and so indescribable. And my grandma says to me, "Tell your mom I love her, and I can't wait to see her." And so in my confusion, I'm looking, and Jesus looks at me, and he sees me looking at him like, "What? Huh?" he puts his hand on my face, like kind of over my grandma. And he says, there's still so much for you to do. So at that moment, I was so confused, and I was like, and mad. I was like, wait, what? I was so confused, still so confused. He just looks at me and says, there's still so much for you to do. And all of a sudden I start fading back. And I remember hearing a nurse's voice that kind of brought me back. Like I knew I was going back, or I was like, and I don't know what happened. I don't know when, again, I don't know when that was. I don't know if it was days later I woke up or whatever, but, yeah, I don't know. But, so again, there's a lot of this from this moment on. The story really starts here for me. And from this moment on is where this podcast, this show will go, and the journey that's happening now. I will say that I on this podcast and other places you've seen me say this, or some people have seen me say this, and I still say I was sent back. I still feel like I was sent back. I don't understand, and I'm going to do this one time, and I'm not going to do it again. But I still, like, why show me all that? I still don't get it. I still, after all this time, I still think about that, and I still haven't figured this out. And I'm praying and trusting that I will have the answer to that sometime. And part of the show, part of this is to get closer to what that is. But I don't understand. Why show me that? Why show me Juju and Cubby and Annetta? Why give me that feeling and let me experience that unbelievable moment and feeling and peace, and then send me back? I don't understand. And yes, there's a part of me that is mad and angry about that. I still feel sent back. Part of my issue is that I don't know. It's a lot, and I'm not going to go into it all tonight, but it's there's still a lot surrounding that. I want to get into one more thing before I sign off for the night, to introduce a couple things. But so I will say this: even though I still feel like I was sent back. Life, there isn't a lot, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way. Never hurt myself. I'm not suicidal at all. But after experiencing that, life here is really hard. It's, I see people pass away, and I'm like, lucky bastard. I know people don't understand that. You have kids. You should be thankful you're with your kids. I am. You have no idea that I get to see them grow up, and I'm so close to them, and they're everything to me. You can't understand. You can't understand why I would rather be there than here. If you haven't done it. So this is me trying to figure out what I was set back for. Now, the other part of this real quick is that it's been very clear since that moment that I closed my eyes when the heart attack happened. And we'll get into this later, that I've always known that Jesus was with me every step of the way of my life, always. But this was different. This was obviously different. And it is so clear to me. how he's working in my life, how he's working in my life, and I'm trying to be patient and listen and obedient, and I've done that, and so many things have been revealed to me, and so many amazing things have happened with my faith and trusting God, and I'm really learning how to walk my faith and understand. I'm trying to, understand what God's asking me to do. I'm trying to, most importantly, understand who I am in this, because my identity is completely different. I don't know who I am. I used to be so full of joy and excited about things and excited about life, and that everything's possible, and there's the joy, and again, I'm trusting it'll come. But there's not, and again, there's moments of joy. There's moments of that are, but true joy, happiness, they're elusive right now. But there's no doubt that God's in control of my life, and He is working on me, and He's working me hard. And I'm listening, and a lot of things have happened. A lot of you guys know that I was baptized this summer, and we'll talk about that some other time. And God has brought people in my life over the past year at the right time to help me through this, to help me understand who I am, help me understand my faith. He's slowly revealing things to me. Slowly. He's not giving me the full picture, but there's definitely things that I understand better now. I don't understand why I was sent back. I don't understand why He's asking me to do this, because I don't want to do it at all. And in my past, God's asked me to do some things that I didn't really want to do, and so I didn't. And I know that I'm not able to do that any longer. I know that I'm going to do what He asked me to do. And my conversations with God, my relationships with God, it's always been very clear to me. It's black and white. He talks to me in a lot of different ways, through music, through words, through moments, there are a lot of different ways, through people. And it's clear as day to me. So I'm listening, and I'm working on it. I feel like I'm doing what He's asking me to do. I'm getting a little impatient. I'm not going to lie. There's that part. So I did want to say that I know that God is working on me, and we're getting there. Thank you, Nancy. So I'm getting there, and I'm doing what I need to do. This show and the other shows are part of that. But so there's one other aspect that, some of you don't know. And this has really been the hardest part for me. The physical part is one thing, and having to deal with all that, it's, great. The spiritual part, I'm working on, and I'm loving what God's doing in my life. I'm a little bit impatient, but I still love what He's doing. I love who I'm becoming. But there was some damage done with my heart being stopped, my brain being deprived of oxygen for so long, and in conjunction with the numerous concussions I've had in my life. I've had 14, diagnosed concussions, and without exaggeration, I've probably had close to 50, really. And I've always been worried about it. So I don't know if this is kind of a perfect storm. Excuse me. That this incident kind of tipped the scales. I'm not sure. But since I was conscious and could think clearly, my brain's been very different. I think very differently. The only way I can describe it is it's like the Freaky Friday movies, where I was plopped in somebody else's body without an instruction manual, and learning how to navigate life without anybody knowing. Like, people are just supposed to assume that I'm me. And, even how I feel things, how I see something, how I see the clouds, how I see the sky, I'm receiving it differently. It's processing differently. How I process information is very different. My brain's just worked completely different since there. I feel like I'm in somebody else's body. So you take the spiritual part of this, and you take this part of it, and the identity is difficult. So there's several things that are happening And I just got done with, I think, 16 hours, honey. I don't know if you're listening. I think 16 or 18 hours of testing. And that's a whole nother story of how I finally got the testing done. But we just finished up, and it was grueling. And but there's three things that are happening. I have these lapses of memory and lapses or confusion, I should say. I can't hold information long enough to either store it properly or act upon it, if that makes sense. I can't multitask. I can't even describe it. But I have these moments where I don't know where I'm at. And, I've had moments where Juju and Cubby have had to navigate me home, or they'll have to tell me where I'm at, and I've got to try to figure it out. Or Juju, being Juju, is so wise and smart on her years that she knows how to get me home and stuff. And she's had to get me home sometimes. It's one thing, leaving the car running. I think everybody does that, don't they? Or leave the gas on in the stove. It's another thing getting out of the car with it in drive. So there's those moments where I will leave the car with it on. I'll leave the car with it in drive. So there's those moments, which it sounds scary. It's really not the scary part to me. It's not the hard part for me. There's these moments of confusion that I can't really explain it. I just don't know what is going on. And I just kind of am quiet and try to wait till I figure it out. And it's scary. I was walking last winter here, just walking because my heart, and I had no idea how to get home. I had no idea where I was. So there's that. There's the speech that you've probably seen tonight. There's some speech issues. And then most importantly and most damaging for me, there's these executive functioning issues. And, I know talking to the doctors this week upon my conclusion of my test, it's going to take 6 weeks for them to come up with the different diagnoses and the recommendations and talk to my doctors and all that stuff. But I did talk to them beforehand to them let me, give me any kind of clue what I'm looking at, and which was really difficult. And not that I didn't know. I have a brain fitness company. I know a lot about the brain, more than most people do, and I've worked in this industry for a long time, and I know, but there's not a lot they can do. But there are things, and there's advances and things like that. But there's definitely, as I'm trying to say the word aphasia, where I struggle with language and words. That's where the stutter comes from. And even when I'm not stuttering, I am in my mind, like I'm hoping that it gets there in time before it gets to my mouth. So there's the aphasia part of it. And then there's executive dysfunction, I think is what she said, is how they classified it. And that's, it's how, your brain organizes, how you organize things and plan and put things in order and sequence, how you make, how do you use all your skills and your logic and put everything together to do work. Working memory is a part of that as well. That's been damaged. So there's definitely everything that, according to me, everything that made me is different. There's certain things that are untouched, like the creative side. I put the show together, the graphics and stuff, and all the the creative side of this I can do no problem. But when I sat down to actually design the show and like what I wanted to do in the order, and like I couldn't. I've been doing this for a year and a half. There's pressure on to get back and generate more income, and it's like it's so frustrating because I go down and sit. I'm excited about certain things. I get excited. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And I sit down. It's like it's not there. I can't hold the information long enough. And that whole part is really right now, particularly the hardest part, and it's preventing me from moving forward on so many different things, and it's hard for people to understand. It's hard for Annette to understand. So I'm having to relearn how to navigate life. I'm having to come up with new systems, and I didn't want to for a long time. I still don't want to. I still feel like my intellect is all there, is intact. But how I access it and the speed in which I access it and things like that. Thank you, Richard. I will look into that. Thank you. It's challenging. Everything I have known about myself for 54 years now. How my brain works, how I function in the world, how I navigate things, how I solve problems, how I identify problems, how I relate to people. My relationship with God and Jesus and the universe and it's a lot. And in order for me to get to where God, all the stuff that he wants me to do, and get to the point where God reveals the next step for me is what I'm striving to do, and gain more clarity, more understanding, and listening to where he's leading me. So this show is going to be about those battles and those journeys. There's going to be highs. There's going to be lows. There's going to be a lot of cries. There's going to be a lot of laughter for sure. This is going to be the heaviest show. I promise you. But the other shows will be a little bit more specific about a certain aspect of it. More so than tonight. But it's a lot. I mean, I feel stuck. I still feel set back. As it's been a year and a half now, there's definitely some impatience, as I mentioned. Is that the right word? Mentioned. I don't know. I lost that one. Definitely some impatience and some anger, I guess. Still, I guess part of me, it's been a year and a half. And I think that's a really, really long time. It has gone really, really slowly, and so many good things have happened. I'm not gonna lie. So many good things have happened. My relationship with Jesus and I have a great church family, and extended church family with people like Richard and Nancy through the campground, and Elevation has been a huge support for me. Music has been unbelievable for me, and so many different stories for that. That's why I have Heartbeat Radio. But so there's been beautiful moments in this, and I see God for the first probably year of it. It was just I was so wrapped up in me and in seeing in awe how God is working in my life, and how I am listening and responding and behaving. But at some point I started seeing how God was working in my family's life as well, not just with me, but with Cubby and Juju and with Annetta and my family. It's so awesome to be walking around the house and I hear Cubby singing Echo from Elevation, or one of the Elevation songs, or Annetta jamming to Lion in the radio or whatever when it comes on. It's just like those moments to me are that wasn't my family before. And seeing God work in the lives of my children and my family's life, and my wife's life, I feel all that part of it is starting to come together. And we went to Elevation Nights and did some volunteer work together through Elevation's outreach programs, and it just felt right. It felt like it was us. It felt like that's what we were supposed to be doing, and it was great. And we went to Elevation Nights in Indianapolis, kind of a date night with Annette and I. Juju and Cubby stayed with Dan and Papa. I broke down 2 seconds into the place, but meeting all the people from Elevation in person. But it was such an amazing night, and we couldn't we knew we had to go the next night to take Juju and Cubby. So we drove to Columbus, a miracle story that got us tickets to go. And we went the next night, and seeing them enjoy the concert and like, yeah. So I feel God working on my family. There's so many good things have happened. But for me, it's still very dark. It's still not dark. Dark's not the right word. It's a work in progress is all I can say. There's just a lot of confusion and a lot of don't know if I'm any closer to answers, or I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I know I've gone much longer than I wanted to. I'll try to keep all the other ones between a half hour and 60 minutes, but thank you for listening. I'll reference this show. I'm sure I will look at it and sure I forgot some things, and I'll either bring them up next show or a later show, or I will I'll cut them out and use them somehow. But again, please, if you have any questions, please let me know. I have a couple of minutes left before I go. So if any comments you want to say, any feedback, any part of my story relate to, or anything, I'd love to hear it. I'd love for you to share this with your friends and family, your church families, particularly. I'd like to grow this audience. I feel like that's what God wants me to do. I don't want, the 12 people that were on or whatever it was. I didn't really look. I want this to expand and reach. I guess Jesus does, because I'd rather have somebody else tell the story, but I really feel like he is calling me to continue to down this path, being transparent and vulnerable with my journey. And maybe it helps somebody along the way. Maybe it opens doors for me. Maybe it gives me a better understanding of myself or the world around me. That's my hope. That's what God has planned this for. So again, please share it. I'll be here most every Sunday. I will post updates on the Facebook page and so forth. If I'm not going to be, I know Thanksgiving will probably be a thing. Oh, Tammy just came on. Hi, Tammy. Tammy's a friend of mine from the campground who is part of our church group there. So thank you for stopping on. So I will be back each Sunday with kind of a different part of this journey. Again, like as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm struggling with organizing and so forth, my thoughts and ideas and the show. So I'm going to need some help. And there's some weeks I'm going to get more of that than others. So I will do that. Again, I have some lost track of words. I have a few more weeks before I get the final diagnoses on the aphasia and executive dysfunction. My wife, she's never mind. She thought I said erectile dysfunction. I'm like, no, honey, executive dysfunction. So again, humor gets us through. So no, there's so many stories to tell. Again, so many good things have happened. So many great people have come into my life. But there's still a long way for me to go to understand why God sent me back. Ultimately what his plans are for me. He's revealed certain things like this show and other things, but there's something bigger that he knows I'm not ready for. So I'm just going to listen to where he's leading me and do what he's asking me to do, knowing that there's something in this moment that I still need to do. I still need to learn before I can move on. So I'm just going to trust in God and all of you to come along with me and lift me up in prayer and go from there. So I think that's all. I got. I'm going to sleep well, I think, maybe. I don't know. I'm sure I'm going to rewatch the show knowing me. But yeah, any other comments before we sign off? I will. Anything on the look and feel of the show, like the look and the graphics, the colors, anything like that? Anything down to the techie stuff? How was the sound on your end? Things like that. You can leave me a note afterwards. But again, I will be back next Sunday at 8:00. Also, the first episode of Heartbeat Radio will be this Wednesday. And I have two people. I'm hoping, I don't know if I talked to Tammy about this yet, but I'm hoping I can get Tammy on one of the episodes of Heartbeat Radio as well, and sharing how God has used music in her life. Thank you, Richard. So I'd love to hear more. Tammy and I have shared some stories and some music over the over the summer. That I'm looking forward to hearing more from her, and I'm hoping she's willing to come on Heartbeat Radio and share some of those moments that where God has used music to meet her at a certain need, or get her through a certain season or challenge, or lift her up in a moment of joy or victory. I'm looking forward to hearing that, and you all should be thinking about what your walk-up song would be, because I want to know that at some point. I'm going to keep on asking you until you give me an answer. So I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you all for joining me. God bless you all. I'll see you next week. Thank you.